Hello, everyone. You're listening to Northern Flights, a Park Pro podcast keeping you up to date with the people, tournaments, and culture of disc golf in Canada and beyond. Consider becoming a Patreon today at patreon.com/parkpro. Find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by DiscGolfPark. And now your hosts, Andre, Jesse, and Matt.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Northern Flights Podcast.
What?
This is episode 29. That's right. Did you miss that intro guy's voice? Like, who obviously isn't part of the podcast. I missed it.
I think it's your older, manlier brother, isn't it?
Must be. Yeah. That was probably pre-Juniper Andre. Or Andre's relative, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely a much deeper voice than I have. Welcome back, everyone. This is exciting. It's been a while.
I screwed up the intro. I didn't hide his name. Okay. Nobody knows who's coming in if they weren't paying attention to the screen. So here we go. We can do a surprise intro now.
All right, we have a very special guest on the episode today. As always, we are sponsored by DiscGolfPark, and our sponsor, Matt Riordan, happens to be our guest coming back to the show. So here he comes.
Welcome!
Hey, guys. Happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. Looking real festive over there, Matt.
Thank you. Christmas happens early around our house, so I do my best, and then I get a little break mid-December.
Totally. When did you put up your lights?
Normally we do that on my wife's birthday, which is November 24th, but this year we went to Mexico and came back, and it started snowing, so we just threw it right up November 10th.
Perfect. I think I was thinking it was 2 days after that. Yeah. Yeah, get them up as early as you can, especially with Juniper. She loves the lights. It's the first thing she points at in the morning. So
that's like my wife. Yeah,
just points
to the Christmas tree first thing in the morning. You bet.
Ooh,
I hope you're watering that bad boy, because that's a long way from November 10th.
I'll tell you what, Matt. I haven't watered this tree in like 8 years. It fits in our house perfectly, and it squeezes right into our garage in the off season.
Amazing.
Wow. Nature, man. It's like Jurassic Park. Nature finds a way.
How far nature has come. Yeah, we have a very exciting episode. Obviously, we have Matt, and I guess I'm the only non-Matt on the show today. As you guys can see, Jesse is not with us. He got sick, unfortunately, so he was unable to make it. But don't worry, he sent us a bunch of questions for Matt, and they're good ones. So we're definitely going to get to that. But today we're also going to be talking about winter disc golf. It was a suggestion by Matt himself, and we thought no better person to talk about winter disc golf than Matt, who happens to reside in Canmore, one of the winteriest disc golf locations in Canada, I'd say. So,
And a man that loves Christmas.
That's true.
Clearly. These are chains on my sweater.
Oh,
Get
my
that
God.
on the street.
Yeah. Yeah, if you guys aren't watching on the YouTube, now's a good time to pause it on your favorite podcast network and head over to the YouTube, because you don't want to miss Maddie's sweater. That's for sure.
It's like a medium. Generally, I wear an extra large, but it is the season, as they say.
I think it fits you perfectly.
Yeah, it looks great.
Thanks, buddy.
Cool. Well, why don't we start off by getting to know Maddie a little. We call him Maddie for everyone, and just so I can define between Matt and Maddie, since I'm looking at two different Matts. So Maddie, we'll talk about Maddie a little bit, and we're going to ask you a few questions. And why don't we start off with just how did you start playing disc golf, and when did you find it?
I found disc golf in 1995. I was in Victoria, and some friends of mine said, "Hey, we're going to go disc golfing." And I said, okay. So we stopped in a little store in Hillside Mall in Victoria, and we each bought a disc. And then in those days, it was like 6 beers and 1 disc to go disc golfing out on the Wanda Fuca Velodrome disc golf course. Some of those old heads on the island might remember that one. We liked it. We got a kick out of it. So many people were getting a kick out of it that course was eventually pulled. unfortunately. So we started just flinging discs at trees in Mount Douglas Park in Victoria. Got a little bit more into it, and kind of when I moved to Canmore in 2001, found the Nordic Center course. By then, I was into it enough that it was like 6 discs and 1 beer for a round of disc golf. Kind of changed my approach a little bit. Got a kick out of that course for a couple of years, and then in 2003 and 2004, Canmore Nordic Center course was closed, redesigned, and reopened. I kind of fell out of it a bit after the closures. There's so much to do in Banff in the summer times. But I kind of picked it back up again in 2008. Again, just playing with some friends, and you get a good group of friends who are super keen all the time, and next thing you know, it's like you're disc golfing 5 days a week. I got my PDGA number in 2013, played MA1 for a couple of years, and then started entering the pro division in 2014.
Cool. Actually, that just reminded me. I said you're from Canmore, but you're actually from Banff, aren't you?
I live in Banff. Yeah, I moved to Banff in 2001. I grew up in Surrey, which is a suburb of Vancouver. There's just a wicked disc golf scene in Surrey now, but there was nothing at the time. Well, there may have been something at the time, but I certainly just had enough things going on while I was living in the Lower Mainland with team sports, lacrosse and hockey and basketball and volleyball, all that stuff. So, yeah, I kind of started orienting myself towards individual sports. Snowboarding was a big reason that brought me up to the Canadian Rockies, and right at the moment, I couldn't really imagine living anywhere else.
Yeah, perfect. The only reason I wanted to bring that up is because we do have a few American listeners, and they might not know where Canmore is, but I can almost guarantee all of them have heard of Banff. So just so everyone knows, that is where Maddie's from. So you can imagine the
Canmore Nordic Center course is about a 25-minute drive from my driveway in Banff.
There you go. I bet you do that drive a lot.
Yeah, I sure do. For a while when I got a new phone, my phone said, moderate traffic on your way to work today when I was driving to the Nordic Center. So I was going enough that I tricked Google into thinking that was my job.
Now, if you, for some reason, are watching or listening to this podcast but haven't seen our coverage of the 2023 Big Bear Classic, that was your big tournament that you TD'd this summer, Maddie, and that was at the Canmore Nordic Center. How long have you been running the Big Bear Classic out there?
I joined the team that does the Big Bear Classic in 2016, and I started tournament directing on my own in 2019. So, with 2 pools of players, I don't play in that tournament, but I go around and play in enough tournaments that I like providing a wicked time for people. And you called it that shameless plug for Parked Pro was the work you guys did to put that tournament coverage together this year. It really showed in the final product, and I can't wait to show that around town and hopefully gain a little sponsorship action, a little support from the town of Canmore, the Nordic Center, some of the businesses.
Yeah.
But the finished product is amazing.
Well, thank you for helping me shameless plug. I thought it would be nice to at least give people an opportunity to check out the course and see what we're talking about, get a sense of location, and I believe you also pop up with a cameo in the coverage. So for people listening who want to see Maddie watching from the sidelines, there's that opportunity. Didn't mean to hijack. I did also have a question about your early disc golf days, though, before we get too far along. You mentioned that there's some sort of version of disc golf where you're meant to hit trees?
Yes, that's right. So sometimes there's tape on trees. Sometimes you just remember that it's that big arbutus spider-looking tree over there, and anything that you hit on that arbutus tree is good. But yes, sometimes you just got to pick the right trees, I guess, Matt.
And now, having gone from, I believe we call that target golf, is that the appropriate phrase for that?
Yeah.
Or object golf, maybe?
Target golf, I think, rolls off the tongue a little better.
Yeah. Having gone
in the
from
audio
that
format
A world where many of our courses have permanent chain-based targets, baskets as we call them. How's your appetite for playing target golf now? Do you ever go back to it, or would you miss playing with proper catching equipment too much?
If I ever want to play in Banff, in the town site of Banff, there are a couple of places in Banff where you may find ribbon on some trees. That said, no, I want to make putts on baskets. I love the visual. I love the aesthetics. I love seeing that little glint off in the distance. There's an object course in Canmore, but I just can't bring myself to throw my disc at mufflers and car doors and stuff like that. Give me the basket. Give me the Disc Golf Park Pro targets.
I'm going to send this right to Infinity Solstice, and he's never going to talk to you again.
Hey, you know what? There's a place for that, and that course in Canmore that I mentioned, people love it, man. It's on the sunny side of the valley. It is. You're not going to find any enforcement over there of various rules, dogs off leash, and it's cool, but it's just it's not really my thing. It keeps some groups off of the big course, which is good for me.
That is nice. We did have an object course here in Edmonton for a while, and it got taken down because some of the tonal objects were propane cylinders, and somebody called in a bomb threat. And the city made us take down the course because it's a propane cylinder hanging from a tree. I guess, in a certain light, might resemble some sort of improvised explosive device.
Sure.
So, tip to anybody that wants to set up an object course. Maybe paint your propane cylinders to say disc golf target or something like that.
Don't, and especially not like a bomb or a grenade or anything like that. I got a question from Jesse here. This is going back to you starting your playing. So he says you started playing during your time at UVic. What got you playing for the first time, which you kind of touched on, but he also asked what kind of things were people throwing back then?
It's a good question. Classic Jesse. He wants to know about the history and the discs and stuff like that. As far as what got me into it, it was just a matter of the right people asking, the people that I played basketball with, the people that I hung out with. Always wanted to hang out with the cool kids, hang out with my friends. My first disc was a number 2 flyer, Lightning discs, number 2 flyer. There was a stack of Lightning discs, and I thought the number 2 flyer had a cool picture on it. It looked like it turned left, and it kind of turned left a little for me at that time. But we all had one disc, and some of my friends had a number 1 roller, and some guys had a number 1 hyzer. So at that time we weren't really into the that was probably around the time I got my first email address. We certainly weren't looking up Lightning Discs website and flight numbers and stuff like that. But a number 2 flyer.
Cool. He also asks because you mentioned that you kind of took a little bit of a break. What made you come back to play again, and what lessons could the new disc golf era learn from your time back then?
Getting back into it to play was, it was just the same kind of thing, wanting to hang out with friends, finding something that we were learning together was really fun. Mm-hmm. There was nobody who was really great or nobody who was really poor. We were all just out there slinging D and having fun. I think as far as lessons go, man, I like where the game is right now. I think there's a lot of potential in the future, but I think it's possible that some people might take it a little too seriously. Now, people want to take it seriously. People want to go to 20 tournaments a year. That's awesome. But I think it's important to remember that tournament results aren't everything. I certainly got into that for a little while. If I wasn't placing or wasn't playing well, I was cranky and just couldn't wait for the next one, But I think it's important to remember that man, we're out there throwing frisbees. Why not have fun with friends, whether they're new friends or friends that you've known for years? I think that's the biggest thing about disc golf for me is the people and the flight of the disc. I love just watching that thing through the forest. You know.
So you're saying the real victories really are the friends we made along the way. It's not just a cheesy saying.
And I think being open to meeting new people, you know, whether or not you're driving through Invermere and you want a buddy to play around with, but you know, maybe just show up to a course and wait for the first two people to show up on the tee and say, "Hey, you mind if I join you or something?" It's yeah, the friends we make along the way, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. We've played a few rounds together, and you do have that a very calming sort of presence when I found when I play with you. I feel like that's always nice because it does kind of like it grounds you a little bit. Is that something that you kind of try to bring along, or is that something you've made an effort into, and does that kind of seep into your tournament play as well? Because you do play competitively still.
Yeah, you bet I do. Yeah, I think that I think it's important to be a card mate that people people want to have. You know, that people think, oh, that guy was really great. I'd love to play with him again. But I think it's important to disarm people, whether somebody is way newer at the sport than you, or somebody is, you know, the Noah Higgins and the Casey Hannemeyers of the world. I think it's important to be able to meld with all the groups, manage your expectations. Like, I'm not going to throw as far as Noah. I'm not going to make 50 footers like Casey, but I could certainly hang out with those guys for a few hours.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Jesse, we'll get another one from Jesse here. Speaking of competitive play, he says you were, and this is a fun fact, I did not know this, you were the BC and Alberta champion in the same year. First, what year was that?
That was 2018.
Okay.
That's what we refer to when you get into the MP40 division. You have a couple of golden years when you're 41, 42, and everybody else is other 40s. So those were my golden years. Yeah, amazing. Absolutely. I was the MP40 BC champion, provincial champion, and Alberta provincial champion.
So he also touches on something that we will touch on later. He says you've also spent the last few years deeply involved in course development. Looking back, what were the highlights during that time? And do you think someone can be both a top level player and make a significant impact in course, tournament, and community initiatives as well?
Yeah, I think that it takes the right person to be a great disc golfer, but B, have the passion, the wherewithal to really dedicate yourself to course development. I think that, and I mean, anybody can do it. Andre, you're doing it too, you know, and you're not you're not the 970 rated.
Yeah, so you could say I'm not that great
player,
at
right?
I know I'm not that good at disc golf. That's fine. You can say it.
I think you're better than you think you are, Andre. I think.
I just I will see.
I mean, we all self-deprecate a little bit, but don't sell yourself too short, Andre.
I'll try not to.
But I think that having a breadth of knowledge that's come from over the years of watching discs fly and playing with all kinds of different players, I think that goes a long way towards making a course that is fun and accessible for a lot of different players. That said, the project that Jesse and Casey and I worked on together at Nipika Resort is, man, I think that might be my favorite course that I've played. I just love it so much out there. It's pretty hard. I mean, there's two sets of tees. Even the short tees, the forward tees there's some really challenging technical tee shots, approach shots. Greens are beautiful. I really love it up there. So I would say that's a highlight.
Cool. Matt, you got any more? You got any questions?
I was going to say about the golden years. What they don't tell you is you also have to be good at disc golf. Just being recently turned 40, it turns out doesn't necessarily work out for you.
Yeah, I mean, all the
Matt's
lucky
living in
ones
this world.
turn 41, but not all the lucky ones are for that lucky to win tournaments. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, aside from being a very good disc golfer, which if you haven't had the pleasure of playing with Maddie or getting to see him somehow, we should really get you on coverage one of these days.
Yeah.
How did you translate that into being involved more on the sort of designy type part of the sport? And I mean, you've got, having played with you, I know that you have a keen mind for the sport, and so I imagine that would have probably come first. But let me know, am I wrong? Was your approach to disc golf? Did that sort of come after wanting to get into some of the course design type aspects?
Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. I think you know, I had always enjoyed playing different courses, going to a brand new course and playing it 3 times and trying to figure out how the shots work and things like that. I knew what I did not like about some courses, but as far as getting into the course design thing, uh, well, I hosted a kind of a bit of an underground tournament coming out of COVID there in, let's say, May of 2020. I was, we were all kind of jonesing to disc golf and couldn't wait to get back out there. And I called it Bear and Back Again. It was at the Nordic Center. We played the course normally, and then we turned around and played the course backwards, like from 18's basket to 17's basket, 17's basket to 16's basket. So that was pretty fun, pretty extreme. But at the end of that tournament, our good buddy Jesse Tomelty said, "Hey, you want to do something that won't make you any money, but would be a lot of fun?" I said, "Yeah, that sounds like
That's
my
what we've all
life
been doing.
goal. Yeah, for sure." And that was the Nipika course. So we spent a lot of time out there. It was walking around. It was drawing on some maps. It was a lot of like clearing brush and clearing trees. The staff up at Nipika there have a pretty impressive range of equipment to help us with that kind of stuff. While that was happening, I was also, since I moved to Banff, I've been working in restaurants, like restaurants, bars of varying repute and qualities. But I kind of got out of that after COVID, and I was working at Switching Gear in Canmore. That's a shop that sells, it's probably the biggest disc shop in the Canadian Rockies. That sells more discs than anyone. So in the process of ordering discs for the shop, I got to chatting with, some people at Dynamic Discs in Kansas, some people at Innova in California, and the people from Discmania in Colorado. And gosh, those guys at Discmania, they could sure chat, man. I spent about 2 hours on the phone with Steve Broad, who was I think a sales manager or something of that nature at the time. And so they were looking at expanding into Canada. They were looking for a Canadian distributor for discs, and I thought, oh yeah, I could do that. But then I quickly realized that that's not really my bag. But they were also looking at expanding DiscGolfPark into Canada. So that's where, some of those conversations led. And kind of throughout the year, I chatted with Steve and Dana Vici and Avery Jenkins. And by the time the next year rolled around, 2021 in January, there we were being announced as the DiscGolfPark course designer team for Canada. Since then, we've put in, hundreds of baskets in Western Canada, thousands across the country. And I have opened 2 more courses, one in Parson, BC, where Andre hosted the Rusty Wrap Up. That was a really fun time. Remember that weekend in April there? That was my first sunburn of the year, I think.
It was that was amazing weather and amazing course.
What a venue. Great course, but he also has like a 400-foot slip and slide, and it was like 28 degrees. We were bombing discs down the hill, across the highway, closest to the pins, rope swings, slip and slides. Oh man, what a riot!
Totally.
And a lot.
I was just gonna say, Maddie brought up the Wizards course, the 51 hole. What's that? Go Organic Sports Ranch. So this
That's
course
the
that
one.
Maddie's talking about is almost across the road from that. So it's interesting because you can have this sort of old Target vibe where you're throwing into buggies and into wheelbarrows and trying to hit things dangling from trees and stuff like that. But then across the road, you have this very challenging and, professionally designed basket course, which is, it's just so awesome. It's kind of like almost two different eras of disc golf, just right beside each other. So,
yeah, and I think the Go Organic Sports Ranch has had disc golf on its. I think Infinity Solstice has had disc golf on his property almost 30 years now. Has to be I think the second course in the Columbia Valley, if or in the East Kootenays there, if Cranbrook was the first.
Yeah,
maybe something in Fernie down there, but yeah, that place is legendary.
totally. I was going to ask if that if going back to when you started playing disc golf, is there sort of as far as golf shots and thinking the mental process of a hole, does that come into play when you're trying to design courses now, or is it kind of you're trying to modernize things, making things more challenging? Is what kind of thought process goes through your mind when you're initially looking at a course for challenge, assessing the challenge level? So
yeah, sure. Well, I think like a lot of people, I started with just one disc, right, and pretty much throwing it just one way. So as I got a little more into disc golf and started carrying putters and actually throwing putters from the tee and mid ranges from the tee, and kind of exploring what you can do with the disc, I started to realize that some courses, really challenged a disc golfer to make those shots, to have those shots in the bag. And I thought that's one of the things I believe in. I don't think that distance should be somebody's only skill. I don't think that throwing straight should be somebody's only skill, or throwing only hyzers should be somebody's skill. I think that the best courses, require a number of different shots, and not just shots from the tee. I like multiple shot holes where your second shot is just as challenging as your first, as far as shapes of shots and placements of your finishing spots, your landing areas. But I think that just wanting to challenge myself and driving 3 hours to play a cool course because it's hard, or harder than what I'm used to, is something that definitely informs my decisions on course hole design at the moment.
Cool.
Now, if somebody calls you up and says, hey, I was listening to the Northern Flights the other day, and I heard you're the guy to talk to about putting courses in the ground from start to finish, how hard do you push them on putting in a course that you would want to play, versus how do you balance that versus finding the right course for the locale, what the maybe owner, if it's a private property, owner of the property, or even if it's public land, the bureaucrats that you're working with, how do you balance those aspects out and still get a course into the ground?
When I first started in this, I only wanted to make, long courses, hard courses, challenging courses, 18-hole courses. But, the more you get into it and the more you talk to people and municipalities and private landowners, you said it, Matt, people have different goals, whether it's something for the community, or whether it's something to attract disc golfers into the community. Maybe an existing disc golf course is there already, but you have a small town in Alberta and you want to bring people into the town. If you don't have the Star Trek thing and you don't have the dinosaur thing, what else can you have in Alberta, right? Well, you can have a ripping disc golf course.
So true. That's such a good sales pitch right there.
I'm going to let that one slide, Maddie. I'm going to let that one slide.
I'm an Albertan through and through, but so I think that you're right, Matt. Sometimes it's a matter of putting 4 baskets around a schoolyard, for instance, or I think that I certainly let my opinions be known because, I want people to have a great course to get better at disc golf. But not every town, not every city, not every private landowner even recognizes the potential. What that forest can look like, what it can look like to a disc golfer, what it can look like to a naturalist, what it can look like to an arborist. There's a lot of different perspectives to keep in mind when you're trying to sell disc golf.
Yeah, I love that Disc Golf Park works specifically with schools, and you're more than happy to work with any school because this is something that other countries are doing way better than Canada up until this point, right? Like, tell me, like, if somebody's got a school or works at a school or is, on the school board or something like that, like, what would you do to get involved and try and get disc golf into that school?
Well, if you live in a small town, you probably know somebody who's a teacher or an administrator at a school. If you live in a big city, you know that there's probably 100 schools in your city, right? So while disc golf can be a bit of an initial investment and it's not $200 or $400, but if you were to spend $3,000 on equipment, that's baskets and discs, not only is that great for hundreds of kids this year, but that's great for 100 kids next year and 200 kids the year after that. This stuff lasts, and the more recognition there is for it in the community, the more kids that say, "Oh yeah, we went and disc golfed, and the man said I could throw it as hard as I want and I wouldn't break it, so I threw it so hard." And then maybe those parents are looking for, instead of looking for a dinosaur place or a Star Trek place, they're looking for a city or a town with a disc golf course to go visit in the summer.
I've stopped at a town because the schoolyard had a disc golf course before. Those kind of things actually happen. And also, people don't hesitate to think about a basketball court as a long-term sporting investment, let's say. So I don't see why we can't get there with disc golf equipment too.
Yeah, and I mean the perfect example is, for those that have been long listeners of the podcast, I like to bring up my brothers a lot because they have been playing for, I guess, a year and a half, 2 years now at this point, and my brother, one of them, recently sent a message in our little disc golf group chat about they visited. I'm not sure where they were visiting, but they were visiting somewhere, and like, disc golf was a part of their plan, and they have 5 boys, and like that was like, they made a specific stop to play disc golf because it was kind of like, well, you're looking for stuff to do in these towns, and disc golf is becoming a very viable option, and especially when you get different styles of courses and different styles of play, and there's so much that goes into disc golf design. And is that something that when you first kind of get this idea of you're first approached with this disc golf, a disc golf course, do you try to make something different than what you've made in the past, or is it kind of like, you have like this list of requirements? What's your approach to the design side of things?
I think that I love being creative. I love being innovative. But there are things for certain disc golf courses, and in particular, more beginner-friendly disc golf courses. There are things that work and things that don't for a number of reasons, right? The things that, it could not work because a hole is unsafe, or it could not work because it's too hard, or there's too much trouble and people keep losing their disc into the blackberry bushes. But I think that there's also some things that do work. I think it's important to, I said, keep safety in mind, right? We don't want to be throwing over active walking paths or toward houses or fences or even like close to backyard fences. We don't need to be in people's backyards. I mean, mature trees. If it's a park and there's mature trees, you definitely want to use those trees as obstacles, but also sometimes as like really pretty aesthetic framing of the basket. Whether it's an obstacle or not, it might, this tree could be behind the basket, but it just looks really good with the basket tucked in under the branches. But yeah, I think that to answer your question, both. Yeah, both. I love trying new things. I love challenging players in different ways, but I also think it's important to have shots that go left and shots that go right, and absolutely to have shots that go straight.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I have a question, another question from Jesse. He says on course development, and this is Jesse, we were a part of a discussion on the use of OB. What do you think is the ideal use and or amount of man-made OB on a tournament level course?
I think it really depends on the course. There are courses where you don't need any stakes because being off the fairway is penalty enough. And in fact, you might not want to allow a player to come back to the line where he can actually reach around and make a shot. You might want to force that player to play out of those trees. That said, if there's a little bit more open airspace and especially more open ground space on a course, I think that out of bounds can be used effectively to force players into making a decision, whether that's on the tee shot or the approach, or on the putt. I don't think that a basket needs to be 10 meters away from any OB lines. I think that that's a possibility that can really challenge players, not only on their putts, but on their approaches, if there's some OB that's kind of close to a basket. Certainly, you want to keep in mind pace of play. Sometimes you need an OB line there because you do not want players going down that hill for their disc. And I'm thinking particularly of a couple of holes, say hole 5 at Raven's Nest, say hole 12, no, hole 11 or 12 or something at Wycliffe that's along the fence there. Mm-hmm. I've lost some discs down that hill, and never in tournament play, but you don't want players going down there and trying to make their way back up because it could be 30 minutes before that group moves on from the hole. So I think pace of play would be a pretty good reason to use OB as far as keeping players out of certain areas, keeping feet off of certain areas. That said, I also make all the water at the Canmore Nordic Center casual for the Big Bear Classic because, that creek it's not really super defined in all places. Mm-hmm. And also if it starts raining in June in Canmore, that creek can swell quickly, and it might not be the same for a group that plays at 1:00 or a group that plays at 1:45 or a group that plays at 2:30. That creek can change. Well, Matt and I have had that experience on hole 18 at Hillcrest Farms in PEI. Mm-hmm. Matt threw a shot. It kind of looked like a pretty good drive, clipped a tree, kicked left. We're like, oh yeah, okay, it's in the bottom of the gully there. We walked up. The disc was not in the bottom of the gully. We couldn't find it anywhere. But it was also pouring rain. That creek was raging. I went back to watch the pro divisions later in the day and found Matt's disc in the bottom of the creek after the storm when the sun came out and the creek shrunk.
Not just a disc. My favorite Scorpius. It was the greatest day of my life. I'll never forget it. I've got
OB is one thing when you're designing courses, but man, does it suck when you throw your disc into an OB in a tournament. You're like, oh man, how stupid was I? How bad was that? Sometimes I just want, I as a player want a chance to make up for a bad decision without losing a shot. I want to scramble. I want to throw a patent pending roller or something to try to scramble a shot and get back out and make my par, instead of, kind of being automatically resigned to a bogey or worse.
Totally agree. As players get better, people throw further and I guess more accurately and putt more accurately from further distances. How do you think courses are going to evolve at the competitive level? We saw in ball golf when Tiger Woods was in his heyday, everyone was talking about tiger-proofing courses, and the discussion went, well, he hits it really far, so we got to make these courses longer. And then they found out that if you make a course longer, you really benefit the players that hit it longer, so they sort of almost did the reverse. We've had a lot of talk about maybe making the targets smaller because people are getting so much better at putting from distance that, landing in 30 feet away used to be, a kind of a tricky challenge. And now at the top level, that's sort of like, okay, you're parked. Where do you see a trend in high-level competitive course design going in the next 10 years?
Well, I think it's important to think about where courses were 10 years ago, as opposed to, as well as 10 years in the future. I think there's always going to be a place for competitive golf at, say, Nicholas Sharan Park in Lethbridge, right? That's one of the longest courses in Canada. There aren't a ton of trees, but the course kind of winds around some trees. There are some technical shots. You have to land your disc in a certain area. Sometimes it doesn't matter so much how you get there, but you need to be in a certain area to score. I think there's always going to be a place for that kind of disc golf and competition, right? I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if players are shooting 14 or 15 under at a tournament. I think that's great. It's all relative. Everybody's playing the same course, right? That being said, I think that going forward, as not only the top players in the world get to a point in their game where they're dropping a disc on a dime from 400 feet and, making half of their 60 footers, but it's not just the top players in the world that are doing that. It's like people who have time to disc golf, regionally or in Calgary or all around Alberta or Western Canada. People who have time to disc golf, people who have time to dedicate to getting better at disc golf. I think that those players are pushing the boundaries of the existing courses at the moment. As far as disc golf in the future and how do we challenge players as skills get better, I think that it's a course can be really challenging for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it requires a lot of patience. Like, oh man, I need to throw this tee shot 175 instead of 375 so that I can have a really good chance to get my second shot. Or if you try to throw at 375 and you kick off into the trees, okay, I need to just get back to the fairway instead of trying to advance this disc up to the next landing area, right? So I think that designing a course that requires players to have some patience is one way to do it. Risk reward, is another way to say that. But I also think that challenging different skills than distance and putting and stock hyzers it kind of goes a long way too. So some of those skills I'm talking about would be speed control. This is not just throwing a berg on a rope right at the basket. This is like landing your approach disc 20 feet short of the basket because you don't want it to hit one of those trees that are 15 feet short of the basket, and then just making a putt from 20 feet, right? Rather than trying to park your upshot or just throwing whatever upshot that you throw. You're on your rangefinder, you say, okay, I'm at 178 feet, that's a berg, or I'm at 220 feet, that's a tactic. I think that players should have to manage the speed and the angle of their disc as they come into a green. And I think that goes a long way towards reducing the amount of 60 footers made, reducing the amount of, okay, I crushed my drive 420 feet. but nobody's getting a 2 here. We're all making the same 180-foot upshot that doesn't really have a lot of challenge to it. I think that those are the kind of holes, those are the kind of courses that lead to this discussion, right? I also think about trees on the green a lot. Trees, elevation, like slopes on a green. I think about that kind of stuff a lot, and how do we make it hard to get a disc right under the basket, but also how do we make it hard to make a 30-footer on the wrong side of the basket? If you finish too far left or too far right or whatever, depending on the hole, I think that having specifically more open sides and more guarded sides of a basket is another way to challenge a disc golfer. And I don't know if it makes scores go higher, but I think that it definitely helps to balance out the playing field. If people can't throw 500 feet, or if people can't make 60 footers, if you make good decisions, you could probably still get par on a hole,
I love it, and having now got to film about as much disc golf as I got to play this summer, I became a lot more aware of risk-reward as a thing that I really enjoy in disc golf. And I think a lot of things you're talking about have a lot to do with risk-reward. We're talking about, having a green that's tough to land on, having to be intentional about where your drive goes to set you up with a better shot, and having a protected part of the green. I think there's a lot of people that don't want to have a single tree inside the circle, period, end of story. The green is a green, and it's a big round circle of grass. But I love when there's stuff like we just put out the BC Open and Raptors Knoll hole 4. You throw up a hill and the basket is like wedged under these wacky firs, I think they are, maybe cedars, and you've got to throw it to the right part of the green. And if you don't, then you got kind of a crazy putt. And so yeah, I love that. But that's like. I think there'd be a lot of room for more risk reward type decisions in disc golf for sure.
Shout out hole 4 at Raptors Knoll. I think that tree actually fell down this fall. There may be some adjustments required on that hole.
The one like right on the green, right by the basket,
like the iconic kind of spider tree by the. I think I remember seeing something like that on the Raptors Knoll socials.
Oh,
well, we have some listeners out that way, so if you guys know if that tree's gone, let us know in the comments. Let everyone know in the comments. Where's that tree? Is it?
And let us know what's the shot now. Can you actually get a roller up there now?
Yeah. Speaking of media and kind of course design and stuff, what are your thoughts on the Disc Golf Pro Tour sort of leaning towards course designs and open courses that make for better camera footage? Is that something that I don't want to say, is that something that's important, or is that, I don't know if that's in something that you've kind of kept in mind, especially as Matt and I would love more open courses just because it's nicer to film, but at the same time my favorite holes to throw and personally to watch are the tough, challenging wooded courses. So what kind of what do you think about of the media side of the design aspect?
That's a good question. I think that I mentioned earlier, I think there's always going to be a place for, let's call them wide open bomber courses, even though I don't really like that term, because you can't just go out and throw whatever you want on those courses. You have to be smart about where your disc finishes. But I think there's always going to be a place for those. That said, I think that given the opportunity, most players on the DGPT would play the IDGC or Iron Hills, the ex-IDGC, or Northwoods Black, or the Mid-America Open, Harmony Bends, right? Something like Glendavere in San Francisco for the OTB Open, I think is a pretty happy medium. Now that's in kind of like a like a major urban center. I don't think that getting any kind of cell service there is any kind of a problem. I think that at the DGPT level of the sport, I think it's absolutely crucial that there's a variety of courses. I don't think I haven't seen like New London Tech. I haven't seen some of the other courses in Charlotte. But I think it's absolutely crucial at the top level of our sport to have a variety of courses. I did hear fairly recently that the DGPT is looking at investing in some sort of. I'm going to show my age here. What I'm picturing is like a van with a lightning bolt on the side and a radar dish on the roof.
Yeah,
But some sort of capabilities to not work off of the same network as everybody on courses' cell phones. I think that's kind of dated technology, and for where the sport was 5 years ago, I think that's great, and where the technology was 5 years ago. But going forward, I think that the disc golf watching community is going to demand a little bit more of Disc Golf Network DGPT Parked Pro. I think that the tastes are getting a little more elevated as far as consuming disc golf media goes.
They used to call them satellite trucks. I don't even know if they use satellites anymore, but I guess everything uses satellites. So maybe every truck. I guess technically every truck might be a satellite truck at this point.
That's meta.
Yeah. Yeah.
See what I did there with the media?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I was gonna say that's meta.
Zing.
And also, Andre, speak for yourself. I am usually running the camera behind the players, so I love the wooded courses because there's no disc flying at my face anytime.
I only got hit in the head once.
Yeah.
Wait, you got hit in the head once?
Yeah, it was
Lightly.
actually
Was the camera rolling?
it was at the BC Open. It was hole 12, first round. It was a very light touch. It was like, unfortunately, Luke's drive hit two trees and then bounced back and just kind of caught me on the top of my cap.
Nice.
I more felt bad for him, but
I can't wait to see the end of the year blooper reel.
yeah. I don't think it got on. I don't think that got caught on.
It
camera,
hit him so lightly that the camera didn't even pick it up, Maddie.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's a professional videographer, so he doesn't let things like,
And I'm super tough.
Kidding.
Get your Park Pro bump caps.
Yeah, exactly. So I do have one more question about the design aspect of things. And this kind of goes back to the BC Disc Golf Association recently had their AGM, and there's a group. They're starting a design group or a course group to try to provide more details on how communities can get courses in the ground. And kind of my biggest question is, where do you come into that process of these communities trying to get a course in the ground? Are you someone that they can come to right away, or is that something that comes down further the line? Do they have to talk to city first, or can you help them with that kind of stuff?
100%. Yeah, I think that that a lot of communities in Alberta and BC have passionate disc golfers in them already. Mm-hmm. A lot of those disc golfers might have been wandering around, walking their dogs in a park, or they're scanning Google Maps looking for some empty space. And a lot of those disc golfers want to get some baskets in the ground, right? So I think that there's room in this kind of disc golf industry for everybody to plop baskets in the ground. I think what the BC Disc Golf Association is doing really well is inviting people into that. I don't think it has to be call Maddie. Now, if people are looking for baskets or equipment or advice or help talking to the city, that's something that I can definitely do. But I think that there's a lot of people and a lot of disc golfers that are keen and are, like I've been playing for a long time, but there's also people that have been playing since COVID for 2 years. but have background in municipal politics or background in public speaking or background in some sort of administration that can really help with that, get that ball rolling. I think what the association in BC is doing really well is inviting people in. Everybody has a skill, even if it's just an extreme passion for the sport in an area without a disc golf course. That's still a really valuable aspect to getting courses built in your area. So I think that anybody who wants to do it can do it for sure. I think as far as why would you contact a professional, I think that there's a lot to be said for people who have done it before, gone through the whole process before, knowing the right people to talk to in the municipal government to even, you want to talk to the decision makers. You don't want to be asking the mayor, can we get a grant for a disc golf course? Because that's not something that the mayor can give you, right? Now the mayor can point you in the right direction. Your town councilors can point you in the right direction. If somebody walks into town hall in their town, those people can point you in the right direction. But you can also contact a disc golfer who has done this kind of thing before and who has some, what I think are some pretty good ideas about how to build courses to engage different kinds of disc golfers, how to get your first course in the area, how to really upgrade the offerings of disc golf courses in your area.
Yeah,
I think that's something I can help out with.
It's an interesting aspect I don't think a lot of people think about when they think about design is how do you design a course that allows for growth and not, challenging people too hard or challenging people too much and turning them off the sport. You need to sort of build up from a good spot. And I think one of the communities I think that does really well is Golden. Because they have this smaller course, which is still challenging, but it's small enough that, anyone can go there and play and have fun. And it's got lots of trees and it's kind of a perfect essence of disc golf in a way in that sense. And then of course the courses, the Parson courses, kind of offer something totally different. So, I think that's kind of the perfect example of how, you can build disc golf in a way that allows for growth. So
yeah, you bet. They can't all be Nipicas.
No.
Although I think that would be okay. I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
There's two types of disc golfers. There's people that like playing courses like Nipica, and then there's people that will eventually like playing courses like Nipica.
Yes.
It's only a matter of time. When you bring a newer player to a challenging course that you enjoy and they just get beat up and all you can think of is, I can't wait till like the fifth time you've been out here and then you realize that you actually love this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we talk about winter golf? We haven't even touched the topic of winter golf, and the snow is.
I have one
can
more
hear
design
the
question.
snow. Oh, okay.
One more design.
Oh yeah,
question,
lay it on me.
Matt.
Lay it on.
One more. What is your favorite hole that you've been had a part in designing?
Hole 13 at Nipica. It's the long uphill par 5.
Yes.
And it's hard, and you can't see the basket from the tee. All you can see is like what looks like it might be a fairway going uphill. I really like it for a few reasons, because of the replayability. Like I will literally walk back from the parking lot just to hole 13's tee box and throw 3 more shots and play all of those 3 shots all the way up that fairway. I like it when you can do that at a hole, when it's not just one specific line. There's a few holes at Red Tail Ridge that are like that, where you can throw to different spots on the fairway to get a different look at your approach, different look at the green coming in. I like a hole that is replayable, and fun to play again. You finish your round and you think, oh man, next time, or you walk up to the tee and you're like, last time I threw a backhand, I'm just going to bomb a forehand Anheuser out here and see what happens.
I have 2 reviews to read you from Nipica.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
One, Johnny Picnic simply says, "Good luck on 13."
Thank you, Johnny. I'll take it.
Lutz Fest says hole 13 is the meanest thing I have ever encountered, with good signage, which I believe I think it's probably coming. And the continued cleanup, I see the vision, definitely world-class potential. Now that one was those are from 2021, so a couple years ago now. So the course has definitely seen more play.
The course is more play, and the staff out at Nipica has, since 2021, has done a little bit of cleanup in that area. So it's that area has come a long way for sure.
Yeah, it is one of the meaner holes though that I've ever played.
The hole is so hard, and if you hit a tree early, like if you don't make the first gap, there's almost no way to get a par unless you start scrambling and scramble. Yeah. Making that hole, we had a pretty good idea of the tee pad, and we saw the vision of this hole going uphill. And there's a few plateaus after you get across the road there. There's a few plateaus that are more open. And we thought about a basket on the first plateau, and then we tried throwing up to the second plateau. And then we thought, well, what if we just put it all the way up there on that last plateau? And yeah, it's hard. It's uphill. It's technical. And people take a lot of shots on that hole. But you asked, I answered, man. That's my favorite hole, I think, is that my favorite hole in BC? I think it might be.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love it too. It's type 2 fun, and that's part of disc golf. So,
Andre, can I ask you a question? What is your favorite disc golf hole that I have been a part of? I guess that would be Nipica and Parson for you.
Oh, that's tough.
There's a really fun downhill shot at Parson, hole 15. It's a par 4. It goes downhill. There are trees in the fairway, but you can watch your disc fly downhill for so long. And Mark Teasdale, the owner of that property, kept throwing his disc. He's a fairly new disc golfer, and he would throw his disc and it would go nose up a little and fade left, and throw his disc and it would fade left. And that fairway just got wider and wider and wider and wider on the left-hand side. He just blasted out so much brush, which makes the hole really playable now. Really, really fun to play.
Actually, so I was thinking about this. I like 2 holes. It's a tie, I'd say, which is kind of cheating, but it's probably between hole 14 and 18 at Nipica are my favorites. 14 because it's just like a what do I do here shot, and there's a few options that are all really hard.
Risk reward, right?
And it's not a long hole.
You can try to get something down to that basket. But if you're throwing a fairway driver at that speed, there's also a good chance that you'll miss the line and kick off into trouble.
Yeah, totally.
You can throw something straight and soft and probably get a pretty easy 3, but can you swallow your pride on that short hole after just taking a 9 on hole 13? Maybe you can't, right?
Yeah.
I like that one. And 18 at Nipica is man, that is such a cool hole, isn't it?
It's honestly, I think it's just it's probably a combination of you just finished 17 where you're going down the creek and it's nice and it's short and, it's fun. I still hit trees and end up in the creek, but,
sure.
Theoretically you don't, and it's really enjoyable and then pleasant. And then 18 is, it's kind of similar. You're playing along the creek and just kind of cool, 2 cool shots that you, even if you kind of mess up on the first shot, you still have an opportunity to make a cool shot after and still get landed on the green or have a long putt. So,
yeah, good holes.
Totally. I think before we get to the winter stuff, we will take a break and kind of update people on what's going on at Park Pro. So we just released coverage from the BC Open, and so I mean, it was fantastic. There's been a lot of positive responses to it. So kind of like, makes your heart big when you see all the support that you've seen. So that's really awesome, and we really appreciate it. Keep those comments and likes coming. We read every single one and try to reply to as many of them as we can, or we have time to, because we do still have lots of editing to go. And Matt, do you want to update us where we're at on editing?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of editing a little tournament you might have heard of called Canadian Nationals. We got to film both the MPO lead card and the FPO lead card for the entire tournament at Nationals. So, yeah, we're going to have 6+ rounds of Thunder Bay action coming to you. So stay tuned for that. I don't know that we have an ETA. There's a lot of stuff on the go still, but there's going to be a boatload of content coming out of that weekend at Thunder Bay.
Totally.
It's going to be awesome, and we're even going to have a fun round in the off season for you too that we filmed. So no spoilers there, but 6 rounds of disc golf plus, who knows, maybe some bonus holes from Canadian Nationals, and then we've got Falcons Flight and Gold Eagle Open to wrap up the season. So yeah, and I will also just echo what Andre said. It really does, it's hard to say this without sounding cheesy, but it really does make the whole thing worthwhile when people watch the videos, and if they go above and beyond and throw us a comment, give us a like. That these are things that might seem like throwaway gestures to all of you, but that means the world to us, and it means getting one step closer to being able to grow this thing and being a lot more sustainable. So yeah, really appreciate all the great feedback and just really just watching the coverage. That's yeah, we're really lucky.
Yeah, so, totally. Yeah. We also have a couple of other tournaments that we filmed that we will be getting to as soon as we're done the tour. So
we might take a couple of weeks off, Andre.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so we'll also have Rocket Bear, which was kind of our practice, I'd say, tournament. So we'll have that coming out, and likely to get Ben and Casey on the commentary on that one, I think would be great. And then the River City Open as well, River City Cup.
Yeah.
So
out of my old hometown.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a fun one too, and that one came down to the wire as well. So it's going to be a really fun one to watch.
Totally. Yeah. And then, I mean, we also appreciate you guys listening. Obviously, if you've made it in this far into this episode, you're officially listening to the Northern Flights podcast. So this is just another thing that we want to, added value and keep it going and just keep putting out disc golf content. So.
And we've got some big plans where if the episode sounds different, we switched to a different behind-the-scenes technology to film and record this one. So, oh boy, I hope this one doesn't suck. But if it does, we'll work on it and fix it. Yeah. And we'll check it out after the fact. And we've also got some plans, and we're working on some different things to spice up the podcast a little bit. So we wanted to get this one done, and we were thrilled that Maddie was willing to come on and join us for this one, because it was we couldn't think of a better way to welcome the podcast back. But we're cooking up some fun ideas. So we've got a whole list of segments that we want to have as recurring segments on the podcast. If you have any dumb ideas or good ideas, but I don't want to put any pressure on you. If you have any ideas at all about what might be something fun to talk about, that might be different and unique, let us know, because we might do it. we might even make a little intro for it. So, reach out to us. If you're on the Patreon, drop us a comment on the Patreon. Otherwise, hit us up, email us. Cool. Hit us up on Instagram. Our handles are apparently on the screen right now, hopefully. So
they should be.
They should be.
And I mean, I want to shout out Maddie one more time, because Maddie has supported this podcast right from the start. I think episode 1 or 2, he was there and wanted to show his support through DiscGolfPark. So we really appreciate all the support we can. Again, go to patreon.com/parkpro if you also want to support us. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, as always, these things don't just fall out of trees. It takes people like Maddie and people like all of our patrons to step up and say, hey, this would be awesome to have this kind of content in Canada. And it exists because of all of you. So, yeah. Thanks.
Well, hey, I also think that there's a lot of Canadian disc golfers out there that have great banter. You know, they go out with their buddies, they talk some trash, but it takes a special group of people to actually go through with it and to make it part of your life, to build a business around it, to build a brand, build a following, and really, frankly, to put out some pretty banging Canadian content. I think that you guys are crushing it, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I mean, I knew that you would, Andre and Jesse, and then when Matt was brought on board, what a power up to the podcast. It was awesome.
Totally.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Enough
Maddie.
nice stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, let's get back to the stupid questions. Before we get to winter disc golf, I've got a stupid question. You were talking about how you play a hole, like hole 13, and then you just want to come back and throw it again. How would you feel about this proposal to the PDGA Rules Committee, both of you? PDGA sanctioned events, you are allowed to throw one fun shot per round. That doesn't count as a second shot, doesn't count as a practice throw. Because how many times have you gone to a tournament and you've played, a course? Maybe you only got to play one practice round. Maybe you didn't even get to play any practice rounds. And the only times you get to play this hole are in tournament setting when you're trying to, be smart, or maybe you just throw a bad shot and you're not going to get to play that course again because you got to boot it out of town. Would you support a rule that said you're allowed one free fun shot per tournament round?
Absolutely not. I don't have time for that, Matt.
It is 4 extra shots per card, and there's 18 cards out on the course. So,
I mean, when you're playing in the moment, I think you would definitely appreciate that. But I think that's stuff that you can leave to your fun rounds. If you're in a sanctioned round, I think a lot of people, especially as the sport's growing, people know that sanctioned rounds and tournaments they're a little more on the serious side nowadays. So I think leave those for the practice rounds.
I love the idea though, because I love the thought behind the idea, because I love standing there and emptying my bag sometimes. When a hole is just so fun.
I'm just talking one per round. What you blow an air horn, or you rattle an old talisman that you found in a cave or something like that. I don't know, but there's one way to signal this is my fun shot.
Nope. Yeah, sure. On the thought of throwing bonus shots, I've only ever did this once, but Mark Dakiv, the legend of Canadian and New Zealand disc golf, invited me one time. I can't quite remember which tournament we were at. I can't remember what year it was, but we went out and played skins at like 7 a.m. on Sunday before our tournament round, just for a little warm up. And I think that we had $5 or something on a round, and we couldn't quite remember how it shook out at the previous tournament. So we just decided to go out this Sunday morning at 7 a.m. and play some skins. But that was actually really fun. It was summertime, it was nice and light, and the park was quiet, and nobody else was out there. And I had a dry pair of socks in the car before the real round started. But I'm all about, back when I was younger, I was all about bonus shots, throwing as many shots as I could in weekend. Maybe next year I'll get back into that.
What if you called it beforehand? You said, it's not like a mulligan. You have to call, this is my funsy shot. And even if it's a really good shot, it doesn't count.
Yeah, but couldn't you just sign your scorecard or whatever, click that these scores are correct on your scorecard, and then just bomb a disc?
There's some courses I'm thinking of, like Raven's Nest, where you don't want to have to go back to the backside of the course.
I love Raven's Nest. That's such a great course. I've had some really great rounds there, and I've had a really shitty round there. But that course is so fun.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
I mean, we can use this as a little transition into winter talk, because I made the post.
Let us know if I'm right or if these idiots are right. Okay.
Yeah, definitely in the comments. We played around at Ravens Nest. Played with Jay, who I play with often, and there was snow on the ground. It wasn't a lot. There was a skiff, but there was snow, and it was cold. It was about -5 when we started, and one of the I asked Instagram, some tips for playing in the snow, and less of a tip, but Miko _Nikayo.
I believe that's Miggy.
Yeah.
Miko Nakayama. Yeah.
Yeah. There you
Miguel.
go.
Yeah.
Miguel.
Miggy with it.
Really? That's
Miguel. Yeah.
Interesting. There you go.
It's his alter ego.
He says, you guys are wild playing Raven's Nest. Don't sleep down those hills, and stay safe or stay warm. And yeah, I mean, if you've played Raven's Nest, there's a lot of hills on there. And I mean, I guess to start it off with tips for winter disc golf is choose your courses wisely, and according to conditions, because if you are playing a course with elevation that has and it's icy, then I mean the dangers of it are scary. But I mean, the other thing is, I bet Raven's Nest is super fun to play when it's super deep snow and you got ribbons on your disc, because it's a lot of trudging. I mean, it'd be a lot of work, but it'd be interesting.
No skips around the baskets.
No, exactly. So I think what I'll do is I'll just kind of go through what everyone said, and then we can talk about what they said, and then maybe bring up our own. So Ace Runner says, blame your score on the cold. That's a good tip.
That's a good tip. I think it also kind of ties into managing your expectations. Maybe
Totally.
if you like to keep it under par on a course, maybe you say, you know what, if I'm 4 over today, that's not so bad. Not just managing your expectations for the score, but also expectations for your distances on your shots, your shapes on your shots. Sometimes it's better just to pop a straight disc out there into the fairway than really try to step into one off the tee, slide off the front, pull your groin, spill your coffee. Manage your expectations. Just go out there to have fun and throw it straight and snap some discs. Work on your standstill shots.
Yeah,
totally.
That's a big one. Or just don't keep score. If you got to use your phone,
so true.
Check your Instagram instead.
I mean, on that note, another way of putting it is winter disc golf is just straight up different, and don't expect the same results. And if you're really working on form, and if you're really working on your disc golf game, I don't think winter disc golf is the place to do that. Maybe your standstill approach game, but if you're trying to get full powered shots, maybe not. Andrew Newfield says, play in the dark with glow and or light up discs. That's his tip for playing in the winter. That's a pretty good one.
That's fun. I've never tried it.
It is super fun. The lights definitely shine through at least a couple of inches of snow. So I can't speak to the glow per se, but lights in the snow actually work great. And it's like they really glow the snow around your disc. So.
Yeah, and it's more than a couple inches, because we played at our little family homemade course last winter, and there was probably a foot of snow, I'd say. And we didn't lose a single disc because of the lights. And even in the daytime, it was enough to light up the snow enough that you could always find it. Like, you didn't even need ribbons.
Andre, you have a family homemade course?
It's very small. It's even smaller than Idlewild, I'd say. Yeah, all right. It's in Vernon. So if you're ever in Vernon, we'll do. I think my brother's even put it on UDisc.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Nice.
78 Supersonic says, stay diligent with cleaning and drying of discs. Grip is crucial late in the winter. So
wait. Is the family course called Lotter Rip?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But it might be now.
I believe it's called Lotter Bogies.
Yeah. A lot of broke. Yeah, that's good. There's a lot you can do with
that.
Yeah. I did hear the question, but I was also really working on trying to get some of my best material there. I think
nice. You nailed it, by the way.
Thanks. The suggestion was to really do your best to maintain disc dryness, maintain your grip. I think tying into that, you definitely want to keep your hands warm. Mm-hmm. Some people have a glove that they throw with. I personally have a mitten that comes on and off really easily. It's like a big, really super warm mitten, and my hand kind of only comes out to throw, and then it's right back in. I'm not sticking my bare hand into the snow, and especially not walking uphill or downhill where there's a chance of slipping in the snow. You definitely want to have your gloves on for that, because if your hand gets wet and cold, you're going to have a bad time. I also use in the winter this product called DG Max Wax. It comes out of Texas. It's like a beeswax.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in the form of a mini or in like a little chapstick that they call Snapstick, which is actually pretty good. But that can really help, especially in the dry climate in Alberta, cold and dry. That can really help get you some nice tack on your disc.
Yeah, I've used that stuff before. It works really well. It's almost kind of hard to get off, actually, sometimes.
Yeah. You definitely want to keep your discs cold too. If your discs are the ambient air temperature, the snow and ice should shed off of them. If you keep your discs in your mudroom with your jacket and your boots, and then you go out to the course, your discs are going to be too warm. They're going to melt the snow, and then the snow will freeze onto your discs. So use soft plastic and keep your discs cold.
Totally.
While you're maintaining grip.
So I'm going to rip through a few here because you touched on them. Kaylin Chat says, keep your hands warm, put on your glove after you throw. And then Mason Hauer says to use a hand warmer. And then German.GmbH says, leave your discs outside before your round to chill them. The snow won't stick to them. So you touched on all
points.
those.
That's the first time I've heard that advice ever about keeping your discs the ambient temperature. I've never noticed that.
It's funny. I accidentally left my discs in my car when we played Raven's Nest because I played Golden the day before, and I was like, "Oh, perfect! Like the snow's not going to stick to them. It's awesome. Works great."
But then you got cold discs. Is it really worth the trade-off? You just get a good towel.
Hand warmers.
Yeah, your discs can get pretty firm. Yeah.
Oh, they definitely get firm.
Mason had a good point about the hand warmers there. Something that I learned from my paramedic friends in Banff is that the palm of your hand has really thick skin. So if you have a hand warmer in the palm of your hand, you might feel your fingertips a little warmer. But if you put the hand warmer on the back of your hand where you can see that there's blood vessels, that'll really help to warm your blood and keep your hands a little warmer.
I heard
hand
wrists
warmers on
as
the
well.
back of the hand. Yep,
you
bet.
On your wrist.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's like a heat exchanger.
Totally.
Yeah, warm the blood, warm the fingers.
Yeah.
And Kaylin's right. Because once your hands get cold, that's it. Like they might warm up, but then they're going to be all fat.
I'll throw feet in there too. If your feet are warm and dry, you'll have a fun afternoon with your friends. If your feet get cold or wet, or if like snow gets in the top of my boots, I'm a little funny about that sometimes. That can start to detract from your enjoyment of the afternoon.
Totally.
Before you continue, I got a question, and I'm hoping that one of you knows because somebody asked me the other day. Does either of you know how cold weather, cold temperatures affect the flight of a disc? Is there an effect? Is it like, I know I don't throw as far in the winter, but I think that's more to do with being out of disc golf shape and throwing in boots and throwing off of slippery tee pads a lot of the time. Does either of you know how the temperature affects the flight of a disc?
Yeah, Andre might have some input on this as far as having played Ultimate in the past. I'm not sure if he played in the winter, but living up here, A, in Alberta where it gets cold, and B, in the mountains at a higher elevation, cold air is thinner. So that's a similar effect to playing at elevation and going to sea level. Your disc does not have as much, air is a fluid, right? So your disc doesn't have as much fluid to work in. So you won't have as much glide. You might not have as much. That may manifest as a lot of overstability. Some people say my discs just fly more overstable at elevation, but I think it has to do with the disc cutting through the air and falling. I spent I spent a couple of winters working at a heli ski lodge, and the helicopter pilots talked a lot about that. In the cold temperatures, the helicopter takes a lot more fuel, and it also is far less maneuverable than it is in milder temperatures. Like warmer temperatures where the blades can cut through the air and generate a lot more lift. Your discs can't do that in the cold. They do that less effectively in the cold.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to simply say that the air is thinner, and I'm glad that I let Maddie answer it because he went way more into detail than I was going to. I was also going to mention though, especially for folk in like Alberta, I know it's very dry in the winter. You have very dry winter, you get very dry summers, but if you have a very dry winter, that can also affect the disc as well. So all I'll say is I think, going back to, one of the reasons we all fell in love with the sport is, I don't know what it is about watching a disc fly in the winter. It's just kind of, I don't know, there's something different about it. And I can't quite put my finger on why it's so, like, it's kind of like has its own little magic, but watching a disc fly in the winter is just super cool. Yeah.
I think that there's something to be said for the magic of the sun being lower in the sky and maybe lighting the trees a little differently. If you throw a disc and it clips a branch that has snow on it and those sparkles are falling and you see your disc going past those sparkles. Oh man, you're right though. There's some magical moments. Fairy dust in the disc golf course in the winter.
Yeah. If you're lucky enough to play a course that's covered in hoarfrost and you hit a tree, oh man. It's just the best.
Yeah. This is one I kind of want to touch on a little bit. And I'm sure that you guys both have some insight into this. We touched on it a little bit. Aiden Funicus says flex plastic, so softer plastic. You kind of touched on how firm your discs can get. So what's the importance of using a softer plastic?
I think that softer plastic, probably like your softer flex plastic probably feels a little bit more like your regular plastic does in the summer. For me, it's kind of a continuity issue. I have a feel that I like in my discs, and to achieve that feel in the winter, I just need to use different plastics. Even baseline plastics. I mean, playing at a course like the Canmore Nordic Center is your home course. You burn through plastic. There's a lot of trees, yeah, sure, but there's also a lot of rocks on the ground that I think do a little more damage to my discs than trees. So landing in snow, you definitely have less of that. So I throw a lot of base plastic in the winter, to maybe get a little more understability, but also to be pretty confident in the grip.
Cool.
Yeah, you can tell the difference in a plastic from plus 30 to minus 30 Celsius, and that like your transparent, whatever manufacturer you like calls it, that premium plastic, that can almost get gummy when it gets really, really warm out, and you do sort of want to replicate that. And yeah, you do sort of rely on some different plastics. But that's also one of my favorite things about winter disc golf is it's like, okay, tournament season's done. Especially if you're a nerd that has a collection of discs behind them, and then eventually you haven't thrown a disc for a couple of years, and it's just the perfect opportunity to bring back some different discs that you haven't thrown in a while. Maybe your form's changed, maybe it's improved, maybe you just forgot how much you loved a disc. Maybe it's a disc that didn't work out for you when you first got it. Maybe it just needs to beat in, whatever it is. Maybe the plastic just feels better in the cold weather. It's just something different. And it's an opportunity to, revisit some old friends. And there's no pressure in winter disc golf because it doesn't matter, especially if you're not keeping score.
Yeah, totally. Mason Howard has another one. Shout out Mason. He's the young kid from Cranbrook's talented player. He also says simply less discs, use less discs, which is also a good tip. And I'll add one to that is keep your white discs and glow discs during the day at home because they are hard to find.
I'll add dark blue and black into those. Dark blue starts to look like shadows out there in the snow
Yeah.
after a while. But Mason had a good point. That's a very a comment that maybe belies his young age, because that kind of strategy going into a round of disc golf, saying, you know what, I'm going to be good with these 6 discs or 8 discs or maybe 12 discs is a lot fewer discs for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there's something to be said for committing, saying, I haven't thrown this disc in 8 months. I'm going to throw it for 2 months. Every round it's going to be in my bag. It's going to be my only fairway driver. I don't need a flippy fairway driver. I don't need an overstable fairway driver. I'm just going to throw this straight one and learn it. And then, you know what? That kind of confidence and knowledge in discs goes such a long way in the summertime when, like I really like it when shots matter. I love going out with my buddies and just bombing whatever. But I really like it when disc golf shots matter. And when disc golf shots matter, you want to be reaching for that disc that I threw this in the winter. I started throwing this thing in January, and now it's September. I know exactly what this thing's going to do. So yeah, I think Mason had another really good point there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one disc rounds are like, it's fun. You get to develop your skills. But it's also like that one time in a tournament or a league round or something like that where you have to hit like a weird Anheuser angle. I've literally had flashbacks of like, oh man, I can make this shot because I was playing that one disc round with this disc and I did it a couple of times. So yeah, it can actually give you confidence out on the course. I will also say in the winter, I don't play with my regular backpack bag. I play with a side carry, which only has room for about 10 discs. And the added benefit is with the backpack bag, you get a bunch of snow down your butt. And with the side carry, you don't. So, think about getting a side carry bag for the winter. It's got 2 benefits.
That's a pro tip. Don't get the wet butt.
I've got my pound bag in for a warranty right now. So I'm also using the Grip G series. Really great bag. I love that one. And I think I've got 10 in the bag right now.
Yeah.
I only carry 1 putter. A lot of times I carry 2 of the exact same putter. But, whatever. It's winter golf. We're just out there having fun.
Yeah.
It's way better than not golfing. It doesn't have to be better than summer golf or even the same as summer golf. It just has to be disc golf,
It's better than walking around aimlessly in a snow-covered field.
Why not throw a disc?
Yeah.
All right. Just a couple to finish up here. Layer up and keep warm. Keep your hands warm from Not Quite Aces. And then Kaid says just lots of towels. Which are, I feel like those are, pretty straightforward. And we have the last one. The Butler 65 says, don't. I've had too many nasty spills. And that's what we'll end our Instagram answers.
I mean, that's a hilarious answer, but also, look, like I always take time off in the off season. There's at some point where I just don't want to play any disc golf and take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month off, 2 months off. It's so good to miss the sport. Sometimes it's really good to reset your form. I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but sometimes you can see somebody's form. It's easier to watch like on the pro tour where we get to watch a lot of these same people over and over again. But, you see somebody's form like changes over the course of the year. And I think I know this has happened to me and maybe it's happened to a bunch of you listening, but your form changes over the course of a year in just such minute ways from tournament to tournament and round to round that you don't even notice it. And sometimes just taking some time off is a way to reset that. You go back out onto the course and you sort of go back to your muscle memory and your form almost resets itself and maybe you get out of some bad habits. So, absence makes the heart grow fonder. So, as maybe that was intended to be a humorous answer, but there is also some truth. Put the bag away for a while. Take some time off.
Disc golf is life.
Disc golf is sweet. I haven't yet this winter. I probably will eventually, but
yeah. Cool.
I think sometime in the future an indoor disc golf simulator has got to be in the works.
Oh, totally.
There's enough indoor golf sim technology that eventually that will transfer over. I don't know if the economics really work out for a disc golf sim, but man, I would put one in my garage for sure.
It's got to be easier, right? Like you put 3 dots on top of a disc and then tell the simulator what if it's a DD3
Sure.
or an FD, and you got a camera on top. Like if they can track the movement of those golf balls, hit it.
Sure.
However
Yeah, of
hard
course.
golfers hit those things, 150 miles an hour. Like it's got to be doable.
Well, especially with what's that hashtag not a sponsor? Those tech discs.
Yeah.
They're coming out with
They're already
rotation
there.
speed and all that stuff's there. So yeah, it's only a matter of time.
Okay, I'm coming over to your house when you get it set up, Maddie.
Yeah, same.
Yes, you two are both invited to the ribbon cutting.
Perfect.
Excellent. That'd be a fun winter project. Should email tech disc and be like, what would we need to invent to take this to a golf simulator level?
Yeah. Totally.
I'm drafting it right now.
All right.
Perfect.
I've got a garage. I got the room. I got a projector. And I got some netting.
Set.
Let's do it.
Any other winter disc golf tips, guys?
Pick yourself a temperature limit. Don't go out there when it's 20 below. Well, maybe 20 below is your limit. Everybody's different, right? I know some of the crew up in the Yukon, Ryan Norquay built a sled that's got a fire pit on it, and they just drag that sled around for their round. That looks like a pretty amazing experience, and I can imagine after it's dark for a few weeks in Whitehorse, you want to get back on it, and it doesn't matter how cold it is, right? Mm-hmm. My limit's about 15 under, minus 15. I do have some battery powered heated socks, there's hand warmers, there's all kinds of ways you can bundle up, but sometimes you just got to clean the garage and vacuum and wear slippers and not go out there and get frostbite.
I have one that's kind of...
And don't use salt on the tee pads, whether your tee pads are concrete or turf. Don't use salt because that will degrade your tee pads and you will regret it come spring. Constant maintenance is preferred. Yeah.
That reminds me, there was one more. CM Wahlberg says slip-on spikes for your shoes to give you grip on ice. And then the only reason I'm glad you mentioned that because it triggered in my head is if you do use slip-on spikes, which I know a lot of people do, is don't use those on concrete tee pads or rubber tee pads either because that'll tear that up. And try to use that in the fairway, or if you're going to tee off with those, use them beside the tee pads. Just to get in line with that. But the one that I was going to bring up is kind of the sort of the opposite of the weather is your set your weather limit is don't be afraid if it is -5. When your body gets moving and you start throwing, you tend to warm up. So if you see that temperature dial and you're like, it's too cold, just give it a try because you'd be surprised at how warm you can get when you throw and get moving around, especially when you're playing a course like Raven's Nest where you're going up and down hills. So
yep, dressing in layers is a good one. You don't want to get too sweaty out there. You don't want to get too cold. So yeah, dressing in layers that you can take off and pop into your shoulder satchel is a good idea.
Totally. Matt, you got any more?
Yeah. Don't use ribbons. They make your discs too flippy. No, that's just personal preference. I would honestly rather lose a disc for the rest of the winter. I got tired of the ribbons. I don't love how it affects the fly roll. And it feels like it's dragging. It feels like it's got extra drag on your disc. I'd rather lose a disc because I threw it way too far.
Well, and that kind of it also goes back to, when we're talking about don't expect the same flight of a disc, or expect the same results if you're working on your form and you want to see your disc fly the way that it does in the summer. You don't tie a ribbon to it because it won't. So yeah. And if you are going to use a ribbon, and this comes from a few different people, is just in chatting with people, and I tested it out last year, is use the thinner birthday present ribbon. The really thin stuff, that stuff is going to have less of an effect on your disc. So
Yeah.
And you should attach that ribbon to the bottom of the flight plate rather than the top, because the bottom of the flight plate already has turbulence, whereas the top of the flight plate should be smooth for maximum accuracy.
Yeah.
perfect.
Get a little bit of tape, maybe some duct tape. This is the one time you should keep your discs in a nice warm place, though, if you're ever going to tape something to them, whether it be a ribbon or a light.
Yeah.
Make sure your disc is nice and warm. Get some duct tape. Packing tape doesn't always do well in the super cold weather, but whatever tape you use, make sure you adhere it when the disc is warm and the tape is warm. Otherwise, it's never going to work out for you. Stick it on real tight, press real hard, make a little cross with your tape. I've seen people poke a hole in the middle of like a little strip of tape, and you can feed the ribbon through that. All of those things work, but or just don't use ribbons at all.
Yeah.
Putters and mid-ranges will have more of a tendency to sit on top of the snow rather than cutting in like drivers.
That's a
and
good tip.
fairways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can just pop out a nice hyzer flip Origin, super pure, about 400 feet, you should be good all winter.
Piece of cake. Couldn't be
No
easier.
problem.
Stand still too.
Hey,
Stand still.
and I'll throw another one in there that the Disc Golf Park, the powder blue looks real nice in the winter. So choose those
So
courses.
sharp. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great time to go out. My winter routine is go out to one of the real short pitch and putt courses. One, you don't lose any discs if you can always see where your disc lands. Like in the summer, I want to play blind tee shots every single time. But in the winter, short pitch and putt course, bring your putters and a couple of mids, it's a perfect chance to get your mid practice in. And it's also a great time if your friends aren't total babies. It's a great time to bring your friends out because usually the courses are less busy. So you're not going to be hassled by people behind you. And what else are your friends doing in the middle of winter in Canada?
Yeah.
Great time to introduce them to the sport. And then when they throw in the summer, oh man, they'll be hooked.
Totally. All right. I think that about wraps up our winter section. I just want to throw out one little note here is that obviously we are talking about Alberta and I'll say the eastern side of BC. If you're on the coast, it's a totally different ballgame. So if you're on the coast of BC and you
Bring a
you're
raincoat,
dealing with
maybe.
rain, let us know in the comments what your winter disc golf tips are for those kind of weathers, because I don't have a lot of experience with that. So yeah.
There's whole places in Canada, not very many, but there's places in Canada where you can play disc golf year round, and it's enjoyable.
Totally.
And if you're one of those people that live there, let me know if you want to trade houses with me.
For the winter.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Maddie, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And all your support, obviously. So where can people find you and get a hold of you?
You can find me. My email address is Matt.Riordan at DiscGolfPark.com. That is available on the DiscGolfPark.com website. You can also find me at the Canmore Nordic Center, Hole 1, every Saturday at 11:30. If you want to come out for some winter doubles, we play pretty much every Saturday at 11:30. Let's see, where else can you find me? I'm not going to throw my phone number out here, but
Nope.
People can find me. Reach out to the pod. You can find me through the pod.
Totally. Yeah, hit us up. And I'm going to set up an email for Northern Flights, so you can reach us at northernflights@parkedpro.com. If you have any questions for Maddie, or if you want to get a hold of him, we can pass his information along. His Instagram handle should be on here as well. So
Rocky Mountain Way.
there you go.
Joe Walsh fan?
Yeah, I'm more of an ethos than a Joe Walsh fan, I'd say.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Got anything else, guys?
It's good to be back.
It's great to be part of this, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on, for the opportunity to come on and talk about discs. I love listening to the podcast. It's like having a chat with the buddies, in the car or something. but I don't have to think of anything fun to say. So it was a bit of a challenge today, trying to keep up with you, really great orators. So thanks for having me on, and yeah, love you guys. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, we love you too, Maddie, and can't wait to play another round with you out there someday. So if you haven't played around with Maddie, you're missing out. So
It's got to be on your to-do list for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Available anytime. All right, Matt, you want to take us out?
For that, from all of us here at Park Pro, Maddie, everybody, Maddie. Come on.
Tell your friends you love them, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.